All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Brisbane City Council meeting. If you would please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to go down there. I can't have that on.
Oh, it's just right in your... Well, how about this?
It triggers migraines for me, so I'll sit down here.
Well, maybe there's a council member who can switch seats with Lori. How about this? You know what? I'll
Unless that can be off.
I could turn it off and then it'll just take a little bit of time to reboot it when it's time for the...
You want to sit over here?
Yeah, or I'll swap with you. That'll be fine. You want to try this seat?
I think you'll still see it from there.
Or maybe with Clark. That'd probably be best.
Try that.
Okay.
I understand what you go through. I have that same reaction too.
No, I get
Yeah,
total migraines.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
it's
understand that.
Not something I'm not even sure I can.
I like it.
Should we move this over?
There you go.
It reminds me of old days.
No, I mean, it's like making my heart race already.
Yeah, no,
So, thank you.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
we're all good.
Yeah, we have a little problem with our projection system, and so we need to have the old school projector, which has got this blinding light, and it is pretty brutal. I can see why that'd be an issue for you, Terry. So, Clark, thank you for being tough, man.
I got my sunglasses in the car.
All right, so roll call, please.
Note for the record that all council members are present.
All right. Now, we did have a closed session. Michael or Clay?
On the closed session, the council had 3 items. We had a liability claim concerning Craig Hardy. Council took action to reject that claim. There was a conference with labor negotiators regarding all bargaining units, and the council gave direction to the labor negotiators. Also had a conference with the real property negotiator concerning certain property adjacent to the Sierra Point property. And again, the council gave direction to the real property negotiator.
Okay. All right. Next up is adoption of the agenda. And, since the person from Measure A is not here, I would leave the... Oh, he is there. Okay. Sorry, Mitchell. Well, then, you know what? Since Mitchell is here from Measure A and he's traveled quite a far distance, I'd like to move oral communications before the presentation and proclamation section of our agenda.
I think that's a good idea to make that motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so oral communications, that means things that are not on tonight's agenda, if you want to come up and talk about those things. So I did mention you, Mitchell, so if you want to come on up and give your talk about Measure A. Yes.
I'd like to thank the council for making this time up to the front of the meeting, because I have actually a third meeting to go to tonight. But I wanted to just address you on the issue of Measure AA, which is on the June 7th ballot, and give you a little bit of information about it, and hope that gets support both in this chamber but also among the members of the community in Brisbane. Measure AA is a ballot initiative that will appear again on June 7th. It will raise funds to restore the bay, clean up pollution, provide for wetland and marshlands to be restored, certain lands that are currently covered in salt, and they were previous salt production facilities, would be subject to this. Levees that have unrestored wetlands in front of them could potentially be eligible to have wetlands restored there, increasing the efficacy of the levees that would sit behind them, and other similar projects throughout the entire Bay Area region. It's an unprecedented piece of legislation that would actually impact the entire Bay Area region in that it is going to appear on the ballot in not all 9 Bay Area counties. It's historic and unprecedented to have a measure that would be voted on in this way. One of the primary reasons why we need to do this is that over the last 150 years or so of development in the Bay Area, as we all know, there's been infill, pollution. I mean, until the late 1960s, it was entirely legal. Down from where I'm from, down further south of here in San Mateo County, you go to the end of Marsh Road, just back a truck up to the bay and just dump garbage right into the bay. It was totally legal. So all of that has to be addressed. Currently, there are about 30 to 40,000 acres of wetlands that are healthy and active, and we need around 100,000, according to scientists. 150 years ago, we had 200,000, so we need about half of that just to maintain kind of a healthy bay. The support that this this measure has is almost unprecedented. Throughout the entire Bay Area region, elected officials, labor groups, business groups, environmental groups. The list is now over 1,500 individuals and organizations that have endorsed this measure. It's quite broadly supported. And as I said, it'll be raised, the monies will be raised by a $12 parcel tax. It's $1 a month. It'll raise around $25 million per year, about $500 million over 20 years, and it's hoped that these funds would encourage other agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, other private agencies to contribute more money. That's what's happened in other similar watersheds in other places like Chesapeake Bay and in the Great Lakes region. If you do spend your own money first, other groups come in and help. So it's a very good measure, and I hope that it's supported by this body and also by the people in San Mateo County and in the city of Brisbane as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mitchell. So I have a question for Michael or Clay. So if we as a body, wanted to make a public statement that we're in support of Measure A, what mechanism would we take?
You could either adopt a motion in support or a resolution that, depending on what how formal you wanted to be on it, and we could put it on. Well, it's not going to do you on the June 2nd on your June 2nd agenda. You could add that as an item if you wanted to do it that way.
Is there something that we could do that we could do it faster than waiting for the June 2nd meeting, or is that the only thing that we could do as a body if that's something that we wanted to do?
Do the proclamation by the mayor. If there was council support to give you that direction to do that, we could take that route as well.
Okay.
And I just want to add, I know that there's a website which allows you to make endorsements personally, and I've added my name to that list. I think I may have seen a couple of other names from our council up there as well. So we, of course, as individual council members, can support and endorse the measure by going on the website.
All right. How do you feel about, if I did the proclamation as the mayor representing the council?
I'm in support of it and have already voted for it.
Okay, cool. All right, then let's do that.
Well, by the time our next council meeting rolls around, the election would have taken place, wouldn't it?
But we can do this, and we can do it now. I could do it tomorrow.
You're actually meeting June 2nd. I think the election's June 7th also.
Yeah.
So it is before the next election.
But if we want to get something out there at least a couple weeks prior to the election.
Let's do that.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, so next up, under oral communications, Karen Cunningham.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, etc. Thank you for everything that you do. I'm just going to read a letter that I've actually penned to the city regarding an issue that I would like you to have a look at, please. I'm requesting a resolution or a proclamation regarding Brisbane's position on inclusion, and I'll expand on that. I'm requesting that the City Council formally acknowledge that the City of Brisbane is a place of inclusion and welcomes everybody equally to our city. if you are open to this request for a formal notice on this, I would be happy to send you draft language for you to consider and agendize on a future date. The reason that I'm asking for this is as a result of the very public comments on various public forums that in one thread included comments from a sitting council member and committee members regarding China. Many residents are seriously offended by the intonation and feel slighted by some of the villous attacks on Laurie Lu and the negative slurs towards China. Social media and local listservs at their very worst. Personally, I believe this misinformation was disseminated by just a few people, and it was in fact a deliberate attack on Miss Lu to try and discredit her and the city manager. With all due respect, no matter how legitimate a complaint that someone may have about any topic in our city, it is not acceptable to most of us that racial slurs be allowed in any of our conversations. We need to act with civility at all times, and it is incumbent upon all of us to make every member of our community feel welcomed and treated with respect at all times. I have not seen that of late. This matter was probably fueled by innuendo and inaccuracy, partly because we do not have a policy in place governing when and where a city council member may or may not travel, and with whom, and where. I am sure that you will make the necessary administrative changes to reflect this in the future so that the concerns over due process can be diminished, if not eliminated altogether. And I just want to add, some of the comments I read were villainous attacks against people of China. Let me just tell you, on my street, I have 38 Chinese neighbors that I know of, and all but one are exemplary people in our community. Another thing I read was about the human rights violations occurring in China. Well, they occur in every other country around the world, including the United States. In fact, the United Nations Human Rights Commission finds that the United States is currently in violation of at least 25 counts of human rights violations. So I would really like to ask our City Council to make sure that our neighbors who are feeling a little disenfranchised at this point, I've had a lot of conversations with people from China, India, and other parts of the world who live in our town who are feeling a little disenfranchised by what's going on right now. So I would like it if you would really consider this request for a resolution or a proclamation or whatever you seem appropriate that really shows everybody who lives in our town that they are all included and they're going to be treated equally. Thanks so much, and I have letters for all of you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. You can give it to Sherry. Okay. I know we have a lot of folks in the audience, and we have a full agenda. So we do have a time limit of 5 minutes, which is a very generous amount. And if we could all respect that time, that would be great, so we can move forward with all the things that we have on our agenda. So next up is Dana Dilworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I kind of have some questions that skirt on legal issues. And the first one is about the notice for this evening's closed session. And curious to know what giving direction on property that how it is listed here is leased property adjacent to 3500 Marina Boulevard. As far as I know, there's an APM number somewhere that corresponds to that, and that's what should be part of this legal notice, not some vagary about how it's a plot of land close to something else. I want to know what you guys are doing. I want to know what you're negotiating. My husband came to one of the Sierra Point or economic development meetings a while back and was told to leave because it was essentially a closed session. So I want to know if somebody representing the public's interest was in that meeting, is negotiating in the public's interest. When I go, the reason I ask is the last time where an APN number was listed, I looked at what taxes these people pay, and it was only $1,900 a year. So are we going to give away the town? And is this that little piece of property that's only supposed to be 3,500 square feet? Are we giving away the town? Or the public's open space through these negotiations that we just call giving direction? I want to know more about that. The second legal matter was that I did write a letter to the council about Miss Liu's trip to China. I am not part of any internet or social media service, so I have no idea what kinds of things have been said. And I asked some questions of propriety of the visit. And I don't know if we wait until the presentation has been made, but I asked about the fair political practices listings that would be, in my opinion, sustainable for such a wonderful gift. And questions like, why is a person who has voting privileges on a council going instead of somebody whose job it is, which I'm speaking of Mitch Bull, why it wouldn't have been Mitch Bull or somebody else who would have taken a trip like this instead of a paying a voting council member. And then I question, the same, similarly, that if this is appropriate, how can that be? When we talk about sustainability, why does a product that has to travel 6,500 miles, either by air or boat, why would a product coming from China be considered anything appropriate within the sustainable umbrella that we claim that we are, that is important to Brisbane? So I have questions.
Yeah, I think after the presentation would be best.
Appreciate that we find out the legality of this. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Do you have anybody else under oral communications? Paul?
Paul Buscal, Brisbane resident. I'm here tonight as a San Bruno Mountain Watch member. And I was just checking in to make sure you guys received your proposal from Mountain Watch that would be included into the budget. And also a link to our industrial wetlands video, 9-minute video that we'd like you to see. The reason why I'm bringing it up now is I was hoping that you could include it into the agenda of one of your, possibly the next meeting that you're having for the budget. And the proposal is directly related to the Guadalupe Valley watershed, as well as the Brisbane watershed and Allen Buckeye Canyons, the whole valley. What our proposal would be asking for is to be able to continue the work we're doing and expand the work we're doing in the wetlands that create a positive for the water quality, as well as the mitigation of mosquitoes. And it also touches on the climate action plan for drought-tolerant planting on city-owned properties around the trail system for the rails to trails, as well as creating wildlife corridors. So I would hope you could put it on the agenda, and if we could have like 15 minutes, because it's a 9-minute video, and then a short presentation about our proposal, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, anyone else under oral communications? Okay, Michael, if you can just give just a brief explanation why item C was under a closed session.
The Brown Act allows the council to meet in closed session with respect to property that it has an interest in concerning price and terms of payment. This piece of property, which is adjacent to 3500 Marina Boulevard, is a piece of property that the city has leased to a particular developer, and the council had before it terms and conditions under which that leased property may be in fact returned to the city, and remove the lease terms and allow that property to be developed for public purposes. So that was the reason that the council met in closed session concerning that item, and the council gave direction to staff concerning further pursuit of that matter. And if it goes as contemplated, there would be a development agreement amendment that would come back before the Planning Commission and the City Council that would address this and other issues. So there will certainly be plenty of opportunity for public input and vetting with respect to the item.
Great, thank you for providing clarification. Okay, next we have some presentations and proclamations. And the first one is declaring May as Public Works Appreciation Month. And I have a proclamation for all of you. And these are our fellas in the safety yellow, and ladies in the safety yellow, and let's give it up to them. All right, so whereas Public Works Week is a national celebration of the tens of thousands of dedicated employees in North America who provide and maintain the infrastructures and services collectively known as public works, and whereas these critical services are provided daily by professionals who serve the public good with quiet dedication, and whereas the Brisbane Public Works Department is responsible for City and Guadalupe Valley Municipal Improvement District storm drain, sewer and water systems, all aspects of public roadway maintenance, traffic signals, public parks, playing fields, and landscaped areas, all public buildings, the Sierra Point Landscaping and Lighting District, the City's Office of Emergency Services, administration of federal floodplain regulations, ensuring compliance with National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit requirements, staff support for the Complete Street Safety Committee and the Open Space and Ecology Committee, and oversight of the marina. And whereas the theme of National Public Works Week 2016 is Always There, which showcases the pervasiveness of the men and women of the profession who are always there and always ready to serve their communities. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Brisbane does hereby proclaim May 15th through the 21st, 2016 as Public Works Week. And let's give it up to these folks for keeping our city safe. All right.
Mayor Lentz, I did write a few words, if I could.
Absolutely.
Since Director Breaux and Deputy Director Kinzer are both unavailable to come tonight, I wrote a few words. First of all, I would like to thank the council for presenting us with this proclamation and giving our department and staff, many who have been recognized here, and I would like all of them to stand. They're scattered throughout that side, some in yellow, some not. I'd like to give them the opportunity to be acknowledged and recognized for their hard work and dedication they accomplished on a daily basis that often gets unnoticed and oftentimes under-recognized. Our public works staff are all essential to providing the necessary services that our citizens, businesses, and visitors have come to expect and depend on. Things like providing dependable drinking water at the tap, providing reliable sanitary flow from your home, ensuring stormwater runoff is properly captured and conveyed during those big winter storms, ensuring that our streets and public facilities are properly maintained and cared for, and ensuring we're doing our best to meet the needs of our citizens as they come to us for assistance. This staff must also be recognized for the dedication and professionalism they show responding to the everyday emergencies and the late-night calls that they receive to clear storm debris to prevent flooding, or responding to a water main break that always seems to occur at the worst possible times. It's these types of events that typically go unnoticed by our citizens that exemplify the skill, professionalism, and dedication of this staff. So once again, we thank you for the support and acknowledgement, and we will continue to provide the best service we can for this community in the future. Thank you.
All right, good job.
Are you presenting the proclamation to someone?
You know, I don't know if that was just theirs.
Or do you want to get a picture with all the guys up there?
Yeah, I guess we could do something like that. All right, come on up. Including the staff people too, right? Because it isn't just the guys in the safety yellow.
Shelley,
Hi, Michael.
how you doing, Mike? What are you up to? I'm gonna photobomb it.
I find your jokes so funny, Clark. I find your jokes so funny. Every time you make a joke, I'm always laughing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Todd. Hey. How you doing?
All right, buddy. All right. It's a good thing I wore my safety yellow tie today.
Yeah, you almost matched.
Yeah, I could get a job. Nah, I wouldn't be qualified.
One that pays.
All right. We have another proclamation, and that is recognizing that that the City of Brisbane recognizes West Nile virus and mosquito and vector control awareness week, and that is June 26th through July 2nd of 2016. And I don't see Mr. Maynard in the audience, but he always comes and gives us an update, and we are very appreciative of the work that the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District provides in San Mateo County, and in making sure that mosquitoes are under control in our areas. And then we have a presentation. Presentation from San Mateo County China Trade Association. And so, George, you are up.
I guess I'll remove this. In introduction. Good evening. My name is George Mozingo, and I am the Executive Director of the San Mateo County China Trade Association.
Well, and George, if you could speak into the mic, please. Oh, no, you can leave that over the light, but just speak into the mic so the folks at home can hear you.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
Okay, this
That's
is
better.
correct. Good. Again, so to repeat, my name is George Mozingo, and I'm the Executive Director of the San Mateo County China Trade Association. We are a largely volunteer organization that was formed after the Great Recession at the idea of Council Member Wayne Lee of the City of Brisbane. City of Millbrae, Brisbane, Millbrae. And in this process of coming out of the recession, he thought that it would be beneficial if we in the county were able to rethink our economies and perhaps have greater diversity in our economy and have multiple sources of revenues over a longer period of time and not just the ones we had prior to the recession. So from that came this effort. So to tell you, we are, as again, largely volunteer organization. We're nonprofit. Here this evening is a former councilman from the city of Millbrae, yes, the city of Millbrae, Robert Gottschalk, who not only is a former councilman but also is an attorney and has previously been on trips to China with other groups, and he has a great deal of knowledge of how this process works. But previously we were asked to talk a little bit about our organization. We have a staff of, well, not even a part-time person. I work sometime with them. We're largely volunteer. We have 5 board members. Baron Suin, who is on his way here right now, and he is a 30-year resident of Millbrae who has an ad agency. Our vice president is a man named Sunny Sun, and he has a manufacturing plant in the East Bay. Then we have, let me think now, the other one is, give me a moment, Paul Cito, former councilman in Brisbane, Millbrae, who was on the school board for many, many years. Some of you might have known him from his previous experience on the school board. And then Paul Shen, who is an accountant, and then Anton Chu, and he is a businessman who was very instrumental in establishing the San Francisco-Shanghai sister city relationship and the China SF organization. He lectures both in China, in Shanghai, and in the United States. He's very knowledgeable about international trade. Our sources of funding are limited. The city of Millbrae and a group from the East Bay called East Ridge Pacific, and they build senior housing. And those are our sources of our funding, other than those funds that we members and myself put up for this organization. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Robert to come up and talk. He has a very wonderful narrative about the trip. Then I'll show you some photos, and I think that'll hopefully will suffice. Robert? There you are.
Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council members. Robert Gottschalk, resident of Millbrae. San Mateo County China Trade Association is a group of local business and local government people who want to introduce businesses in this county with businesses in China which may want to cooperate with each other. As George says, it's a nonprofit corporation. We're right now in the process of applying for nonprofit tax-exempt status under IRS Code 501c6. Our delegation of 15 people visited 2 cities in southeastern China in March. This is my 6th trip to China, once as a council member, once as a vice mayor, and 3 times, each of which I was mayor, in each of those 3 years, mayor of Millbrae. We spent only a total of 4 days on our trip, attended a high-tech and investment conference listening to presentations on the opportunities and successes of businesses in Zhongshan, along with approximately 1,000 other people from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the United States. We heard speeches by Mr. Yang Wenlong, Vice Mayor of Zhongshan, 3 representatives of the Chambers of Commerce in Switzerland, and the head of a drug company in China, Novartis, among others. Attended a dinner that night with the same 1,000 people and enjoyed listening to remarks by Mayor Chen Liangshang of Zhongshan. The next day brought a meeting with a Chamber of Commerce leadership group comprised of younger people involved with smaller businesses than those from which we heard the day earlier. That afternoon, we visited the showroom of Hesty Cabinets, which makes high-quality kitchen, bath, and decorative cabinets for the home. They also happen to have a factory in Hayward, California. This was followed the same afternoon by a tour of the Meitu Plastics Company, which manufactures a very wide variety of plastic goods, including packaging for Nestle. That evening, we had an informal dinner with some of the managers of Meitu Plastics Company. The next day, we enjoyed touring the very impressive Hongli Company, which makes very high-quality, high-tech LED lighting of all kinds. Very fascinating. We saw a bit of our future, the kinds of things that they're developing there. That evening, we had a meeting with Mr. Lin Zhongsheng, Chief Executive of Huadu District of Guangzhou City, followed by a dinner and discussion of the kinds of businesses that they're interested in bringing to their city, including electric vehicle manufacturing. The next day, we had lunch with Mr. Hu Yibin, administrator of the Zhongshan Torch High-Tech Industrial Development Zone. I'd like to stress that no meetings were held with anybody currently discussing development or business in Brisbane. No agreements were signed with the exception of Brisbane Chamber of Commerce and the Zhongshan Chamber of Commerce, and no commitments or promises were made other than to increase communications and to visit each other regularly. The trip ended following that lunch after only 4 days. 5 of us remained in Hong Kong for anywhere from 2 to 5 days each to do some shopping and some sightseeing. These days, of course, at our own personal expense. The airfare to and from China was paid for by contributions from members and supporters of the association here in California. Hotels for 4 nights were paid by the Zhongshan and Guangzhou city governments, as well as 4 lunches and 4 dinners. The city of Brisbane paid no part of any cost. Elected officials who went on the trip will file their FPPC Form 700 on sources of funds and expenses. And of course, these are all public record. So why do business with China? We already do to a great extent. China is the second largest economy in the world. China invested $1.8 billion in California alone in 2015, an increase of 30% from the year before. California, as we know, is the 8th largest economy in the world. The proximity of San Francisco Peninsula to Silicon Valley and San Francisco Airport makes us particularly attractive. A regional headquarters, a sales office, or perhaps a clean assembly plant here would be very attractive to businesses in Zhongshan. China is a huge country comprised of 30 provinces or states, 1.3 billion people, and every part of the country is different from the other. You cannot generalize perceptions of China, but you must look at very specific locations and the people in those locations. Guangdong province in the southeastern part of China is the most Western business-oriented of all, and also with a great emphasis on the environment. Zhongshan is a national model city for environmental protection and claims to have the number 6 best air quality of all the cities in China. So we're not dealing and talking with the Beijing government, the central government in the capital, nor are we talking with huge global corporations. We're talking with local government vice mayors and business promotion people in their counties and small towns, small cities. Just incidentally, there are 600 Swiss companies in China and more than 70 Chinese companies in Switzerland. So the Swiss see very good reason to have mutual investment. And of course, this is true with so many other countries around the world. Coincidentally, Zhongshan set up a business incubator in San Jose just last November 2015. So like Sister Cities International, we in the Trade Association believe getting to know people in other countries and engaging through periodic communication has a tendency to reduce possible tensions between peoples and countries. More immediately, our efforts will lead to business cooperation and collaboration, highly beneficial to businesses in China and to San Mateo County. As we think about this, we cannot prevent change. Change is going to happen. We're most wise to guide change in a positive manner and bring about positive results. The potential benefits to the city of Brisbane, we think, are considerable. With vacant land available close to San Francisco and SFO, your city is a very attractive site for the establishment of profitable new businesses. Zhongshan has successful businesses seeking a premier location in which to initiate California presence. So we feel Brisbane should reach out to such businesses and encourage them to invest here in your city as a means to strengthen your business activities and enhance city revenue. This is the role of the San Mateo County China Trade Association, to try to assist cities in our county to bring desirable businesses into their jurisdictions. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Do any council members have any questions for Robert in regards to the China Trade Association? No? Okay. All right. Is there anything else to your presentation, George? Or is it? Yeah.
Actually,
Why don't you show those, please?
I do have a question, actually.
Do you have? Okay.
Yeah. Would you be able to list the other council members or the other elected officials that went on the trip this year?
Of course. It was Councilmember Wayne Lee of the city of Millbrae, Mayor Mark Adiego of the city of South San Francisco, Vice Mayor Pradeep Gupta of the city of South San Francisco. And that was the trip. And then, of course, Mayor Pro Tem Liu was a member.
And then there were representatives from other Chamber of Commerces as well? Or just Brisbane Chamber of Commerce?
Just the Brisbane Chamber of Commerce, yes. There was other businesses, but they were not Chamber of Commerce. There was the only official Chamber of Commerce group was from Brisbane.
And on previous trips, it's my understanding that there have been representatives from other cities that weren't represented this time. Like
first and only trip we've ever done. There's a lot of other groups that
Oh,
go
okay,
there
like
on a
other
regular basis, and
different trips. Okay.
I doubt there's. I can't speak to it, but there's dozens and dozens of mayors who have been there, and other council members, and other chamber members, and lots of businesses.
But through a different organization.
Different organizations
Okay.
other than ours. There's several of them who work. We're the only one that's sort of have this our affiliation with the municipality of Millbrae.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, George.
So let's try to make this work. Excuse me. Like probably on the screen. So the next one, yes. The next one is. So the San Mateo County Trade Association, as Robert has previously mentioned, had a very successful visit to Zhongshan in Guangzhou, China on March 26th. We just got back not so many weeks ago. And then the next step. Our delegation, including 15 people, mayors, elected officials, and successful business owners from the county. We met with the government and business leaders, as Robert previously mentioned, and visited several different types of businesses that may be appropriate candidates to establish conditions here. In these pictures, you can see us at the large conference, and as you can probably see, your mayor and Robert and the vice mayor of South San Francisco in that photo as well. Next one now. We also received a briefing on wide business activities and a substantial effort to seek collaboration with cities and businesses to have growth through synergy. They would like to learn from us as much as we can help them. So in this photo, you will see Brisbane Chamber of Commerce member Ron Davis signing the agreement with the Chamber of Commerce of the city of Zhongshan. The next photo, and these are Zhongshan is a city of 3 million people near Hong Kong. It's about 80 kilometers northwest of Hong Kong. It has a very large private business sector and generates a growth of about 8.4%. There's a great deal of similarity between Zhongshan and this part of the world. Here we live in the Bay Area, particularly here on the peninsula. It was originally agricultural, and then we went from agricultural to building ships. And then when the ship thing got over, they became light manufacturers, and now they're moving into high tech and biotech. So it's kind of, if you think about the Bay Area, particularly if you think of the city of South San Francisco, how they went from steel rope to Genentech. Very similar arc of history.
Mm.
This is the vice mayor presenting the council members from the different cities with a book to remember their trip. The book highlights perhaps the most singular, iconic image of the city of Zhongshan, and that's the statue of Sun Yat-sen. Sun Yat-sen was in fact born in this part of the world, and Mr. Sen, for those of you who remember, brought the republic to China and was the first president of China. He is revered, and in fact, is my understanding, and hopefully when Baron gets here, he could explain to you how that province was renamed in honor of this man who promoted democratic institutions in China. This was the trade fair. As Robert said, they were representatives from every continent and nation on earth, just about. They were a surprising number of European and African firms, as well as Latin American firms. And there was just a great deal of energy and excitement about cooperating in the future, about creating business opportunities between our communities. We met with the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce has 6,000 members. And these are small businesses between 50 and 200 people. So, and there are about 6,000 members, and they all they're very young, very aggressive, and very interested in their entrepreneurial spirits, and we're hoping to either work with them there or here. And as I mentioned earlier, as Robert mentioned earlier, the conditions right now are are really tremendous. A very exciting time. The people are really looking for expanding trade, to develop a better relationship with this part of the world. And the people of Zhongshan are the second largest ethnic group that moved to the United States in the previous time. The largest group, of course, is the people of Taishan. But the second largest group are the people of Zhongshan. So they have historical ties to our area, and lots of our Chinese American community are members of, trace their roots back to Zhongshan. And with a great deal of enthusiasm, they're really looking to outreach to California and to reestablish those ties. And quite finally, the last slide. That there's really the discussion was a very serious one about developing a win-win. That is, both sides benefits. We benefit as communities here in the Bay Area, and they benefit in their communities in China through this exchange of trade, knowledge, and investment. Yes. And we have actually identified two businesses who are interested in locating here in Brisbane. One would construct and assemble furniture and have a display facility here. And the other is the state-of-the-art lighting fixtures. Robert touched on that very briefly. It was the most amazing experience. I have not looked at a light bulb the same way since then. This entire new generation of the way that the world is going to be illuminated. I feel this like people might have felt at the end of the gas lamp district. These electric lights are coming. It was very exciting for those of us who had an opportunity to see what will be coming and how efficient they are. Some of them use 10% of what a current light bulb uses in terms of energy use. It was very, very exciting. And then the San Mateo County Trade Association is a process. We're trying to be an excellent source of carefully selected new business for your cities. We want to make sure that the businesses come here are appropriately vetted. So you don't get those firms who are doing the bad things, or conversely, the people who go over there will be not the ones who are going over there to exploit people, but to bring benefit. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Council member questions for George? That was a good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Aaron comes, he can explain. I'll introduce him when he gets here.
Okay. All right. So, Lori, sounds like you had a pretty amazing trip. You want to share your experience with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you first to George and to Robert for being here and for really giving a very accurate description of what happened on the trip. And I want to extend my thanks for inviting our city to participate. It was really an amazing opportunity. First, I want to talk, though, about who we are as a city and how this type of trip can fit into what our goals are. So, to me, when I think of Brisbane, when I think of why we all want to live here, I think of, our small town character, where we can all talk to each other, we can agree to disagree, but we can still be friends. And the tenor of what I've heard recently, and what's unfolded over the last few weeks since this trip, what I've heard, I don't feel is really becoming of our character. When people put posts on Facebook that are blocked from other people from making comments, when we make false accusations, or if we make any xenophobic or racist comments, that's really, in my mind, against the character of who we are as a people in Brisbane. And, I want to make sure that that type of behavior is not perpetuated. And, I want to see something positive come out of this. In our city, we value things like open space and the recreational opportunities. The environmental sustainability, of course, is core to our identity. And the plethora of city services that are provided to such a small town population are really impressive. And of course, we couldn't provide any of those services without revenue from our businesses. And I went as the vice mayor of Brisbane, but also in my role being on the economic development subcommittee, it's part of my job to make sure that we can continue to provide those services to the community. And that's why we need to continue to have a sustainable, thriving business community here to continue to do that for our residents. So I've heard people's concerns about why would we be interested in the large corporations in China, or what about these labor practices? And I understand where your concerns are coming from, and I want to assure you that I absolutely support ethically and morally responsible companies coming into our town. Yet at the same time, I think it's really important that we never use nationality to determine whether or not a company is suitable for our town. We can't just take something at face value. We need to really look at each company and vet it and see what it's all about. And on the flip side, when we look at our own country, we've had practices of our own that we're not so proud of. What we did to the Native Americans and slavery and the Chinese Exclusion Act and Japanese concentration camps, nuclear weapons, Guantanamo, the list goes on. And that behavior of our past, certainly doesn't represent the character of all American companies or all Americans in general. So I think it's really important that we don't make those generalizations here when we're looking at China or Chinese companies. Every company is different and has to be judged on its own merits. And Chinese companies, like any other companies from other countries, really have the right to do business in Brisbane. They have the right to operate here and contribute to our community, as do the people that come from those countries. As for the social media, I'm glad to see that there's so many people in the audience here, because there has been a lot of misinformation on Facebook and through email that I've seen. And so I think it's really important that, in the future, I would encourage people, rather than posting comments that a council member who could respond with accurate facts, rather than doing that behind that person's back, I think it's really important, and I encourage the public to really contact us. We're approachable. We live here. We're your friends and neighbors too, so you all know how to reach us. And I think that will hopefully make the discourse more civil, because it's always easier when you're hiding behind a computer to put something online. And we've all seen that happen with social media. It's really unfortunate, but people put things online that you would never say to somebody's face. So I just want to be reminding people about, let's remember we're neighbors, we're friends, and we need to be respectful and make Brisbane proud. So going back to this trip, so this was the first opportunity for our city to participate in an overseas trade mission. As was mentioned, there's been many other cities that have gone on these types of trips. In the past several years, they've become more prevalent, and there's some clear economic, advantages of communicating with businesses in China. They were interested in learning more about our investment opportunities, our real estate, our business climate, and they see our market in the Bay Area as a really great place for them to have some projects. And vice versa, we have some businesses in town that already do business in China or that also are of Chinese origin. For example, we have Lima Electronics. We have Fong Brothers Printing, a family-owned business. We have some other companies that are interested. We contacted our Chamber of Commerce, Mitch Bull, and he gave me a list of companies that would be interested in exploring opportunities in China to either do trade to China through exports or to consider setting up some offices in China. And those included companies like Purcell Murray and By-Right Food Service distributors. So this trip was very beneficial to those companies to see how they can increase their revenues, which of course will help the city as well. So just want to tell people about how I got invited to the trip. So the invitation first came to our mayor, Cliff Lentz, and he was not available. So as Mayor Pro Tem, he asked me if I would be interested in going. And, I looked at my calendar and thought, this is a great opportunity. I can make this work. It did require quite a bit of planning on my part because I do have, young children and have to take care of, a lot of the responsibilities at home. So I actually worked with my family and my husband to make sure that all of our child care was covered for those 4 days. And took a lot of efforts to really make sure that I could be able to participate. And as I think was mentioned, North San Mateo County is really in a great spot for investment opportunities from overseas because we're so close to the airport. And I asked why our cities, why our 3 cities, why were they selected? And what I was told was because of our proximity to the airport. And we've had discussions actually with our Assembly member Kevin Mullen to talk about whether we could set up some economic trade zone to really incentivize businesses to come and do business in our cities. So those are some of the next steps that we'll be doing. We saw VWR leave because of trade incentives in Visalia. Well, it's a great opportunity that we have with our proximity to the airport to see if we can bring businesses to town rather than the other way around. So what we did on the trip, I think everybody gave a really good description. I was really impressed by the LED company that we saw. They had some really interesting sustainable features. Like when we walked outside of their facility, they had lights that were with solar panels and wind turbines. So they were combining multiple different types of sustainable practices, and then they had applications for their LEDs that were anywhere from transit, like in the subway, to medical X-ray machines, to keeping your produce cool and not spoiling at the supermarket. So it was just like this very futuristic showroom. I felt like it was like walking through IKEA, but in the next 100, 200 years from now, and it was quite amazing. So as was mentioned, that company is interested, as well as the furniture company. So I think that there's some real potential next steps. And one of the things that the vice mayor said to us in Zhongshan was that he was interested in some specific follow-up, and he was hoping to form a liaison trade association in China so that they could then communicate with the trade association here and speak a common language and figure out, what their businesses want and what our businesses want and provide. And it would just be this, line of communication that we would never otherwise have because, of course, the language barrier, the culture, but to be able to have that connection, I thought was really, really valuable. And let's see. So I wanted to also address a couple of the steps in the process of how we went about. As I mentioned, I was asked by the mayor to see if I was interested in attending, and I did consult with the mayor and also the city manager before accepting the trip. And they said they didn't see a problem with it, but they thought that it would be important to inform the council of my decision. And with the timing of the trip coming up, it was like I think we got invited maybe a month before the conference. At the next opportunity, at the next council meeting, I then informed the council that I was planning on going on this trip. I I was advised by our city attorney to make sure I reviewed the FPPC rules, which there's some Form 700 requirements that were mentioned where we once a year, all public officials have to file a document saying if we received any financial benefit from any entities. And so there's this thing called the gift limit, which is basically you can get up to $460 of a gift from one entity, and that's the limit per year. Well, what I was advised by the FPPC is that this falls outside of as an exception to the gift limit because it's related to a governmental or legislative purpose, and it's paid for by a foreign government or a nonprofit. And I confirmed with the association as well that that was the case, and I was advised that they will be preparing detailed accounting for all the attendees on the trip, so that we'll be able to file that document. As was mentioned, nothing was paid for by the city. And I've also heard some bit of confusion. I just want to clear up about a $10,000 payment by the city. As I mentioned, the city did not pay anything for this trip. I think what people were referring to is that there's a $10,000 membership fee if the city chooses to become a member of the trade association, the San Mateo County China Trade Association. We've been asked to join, and we've discussed it in our economic development subcommittee, but at this time we have not joined. And that's something that will be coming up in the future in our budget discussions, but there was no $10,000 payment by the city. Okay. And just bear with me. There were a lot of concerns. I want to make sure I address them up front. Another question was whether we have a policy for foreign travel by the city or for a person when we travel on behalf of the city. And we do not have any policy because this is the first trip we've gone on. So, we can certainly talk about whether we want to have a policy in the future, but my understanding from the other cities is that a council member can make the decision on their own whether to attend and inform the council. And I asked around some people who's been on these types of trips, and they haven't had any policy where their council had to give permission before the trip was agreed to. And as was mentioned, several of us extended their trip for personal, family vacations. Obviously, none of that was paid for by the trade association or the governments in China or the city. And that's certainly reasonable and normal for people going on these types of trips to then stay and go on a family vacation, which is completely separate from the trip. I also want to point out, I've heard concern about whether I met with anyone from Universal Paragon Corporation, which owns the Baylands. I did not. As we all know, China is a very large country. UPC is a Chinese-owned company. They happen to be based in Fujian province, which is not in Guangdong province. It's in a different part of the country. You'd have to take an airplane ride, most likely, to get there from where we were. And as Karen Cunningham mentioned during her public comment, we have a lot of, especially now recently, a lot of new immigrants, a lot of Chinese and Southeast Asian residents coming into town. And I know in the Ridge, there's a lot of the people now living at the Ridge are immigrant families. And so I think, I want to reiterate that it's really important that we base our decisions as a city on, the merits of companies and not make generalizations about where businesses are from. So I think, I'm really grateful to have gone on the trip. I think I'm looking forward to the specific potential projects that we can consider. And, a lot of other cities have been doing this, and we're sort of one of the last cities to start these types of trips. So I think there's definitely ways for the businesses that we see in China to fit into our character. And I want to make sure that going forward, we view all the businesses and the cities and countries that we visit with an open mind. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right. Do any council members have any questions for Lori?
No, I don't have any questions. Actually, Lori and I had a conversation, regarding the upcoming trip, as far as what it's going to be about, and I had the opportunity to talk to the office manager of the next one, and I think really kind of what's happened here is a timing issue, fear, and misconception that balled into one that caused a negative reaction from some community members. From what I see is that right now we're in the final phase of an environmental impact report on the Baylands, which happens to be the largest piece of undeveloped property in San Mateo County, one of the largest in the Bay Area, and it happens to be owned by a Chinese company with UPC or Tuntex Corporation. And I think with Lori going to China, people drew the conclusion from A to B that she's going there to meet with UPC. No, I'm just saying that a total misconception, and that the fear that people have just kind of ran rampant. And I think, George and Bob, your presentation, I hope helped clear that up, and Lori, with what you described, help clear the misconceptions up of what's going on. And I've heard some of the stuff and seen some of the stuff, and I'm sorry that you personally had to go through that. It just wasn't fair to you without hearing a story. People drawing conclusions right away. I hope that this clears up things, as far as a lot of the misconceptions out there. It should, but we'll see going forward. And I think going forward that, from what I understand, there's going to be a lot more of these trips that are available. It's not just Brisbane. It's just mayors and vice mayors in general from other cities. And when I had the opportunity to talk to this office manager from the China Silicon Valley Association, the first thing they asked me is, hey, do you know any mayors? You have any friends that are mayors? And then we got a couple extra seats on this trip in May, and that's kind of how the conversation started. So I got a copy of the itinerary and who the sponsors are and stuff like that, and the trips on who they're going to visit and the cities and stuff like that. And it was a good, interesting conversation, and it ended was, you are going to talk to your friends, right? Because we have about 2 or 3 more seats open. So, I don't know. I think going forward for us as being a small town, I think we kind of agendize this in the future. We're elected to represent our city. And if the city was paying for it, it'd be a different issue.
It would be.
Okay, when somebody else is paying for it, it's a total different issue because you are a representative of the city because we're elected to represent. But from a communication standpoint, I think it'd be prudent for us to get out in front of it and say, I've been invited to this trip. This is what the agenda is, and this is who's sponsoring it, and this is where we're going, and this is what the purpose of it is. That way we're out front of it, and it kind of eliminates this backlash that happens post hoc. So, thank you guys for your presentation. It was wonderful to see that. It certainly clears up, I think, a lot of questions. And Lori, thank you for being very explicit on that. And hopefully going forward, we'll clear it up. I know that a couple of years ago when I was mayor, I was invited to go to Cuba. Now, not on the city's expense, but it would be on my expense. And I would have loved to have gone to Cuba. But I didn't really see a purpose of going there because, other than Cuban cigars. And I'm not a smoker, so. Anyway, I think going forward there's going to be a lot more of these trips, and just to calm people's fears has absolutely nothing to do with our major property owner here in Brisbane. China is a very large country, and there could be some opportunities there. So, thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. All right, Madison, you want to say anything? Or?
Sure. Well, thank you, Lori, for presenting that, and I'm glad that you were able to answer a lot of those concerns. I felt that that explanation was important to have come from you versus any of us because you were on the trip. And so therefore, I'm glad that I think a lot of the questions have been answered. I'm also excited about these opportunities that are available, and I can't wait to see what's going to come, from that trip. I do want to say that I think there have been times that our council members have visited other cities for some city business before. It's my understanding that there have been trips to Australia before where, since we're sister cities with Brisbane, Australia, that council members have gone there, and their mayor has come here, and I don't feel like there was really a big hullabaloo made about that. And so I'm kind of thinking that because your visit was to China specifically, that was taken and made into something much bigger and jumping to conclusions, like Clark said, going from A to B without discussing anything that happened in between. I would like to urge the people that are in this room that have heard this explanation that if you hear anything else that's contradictory to what has been said, that you will be able to actually explain to some members of the community what actually occurred, since I know that not everyone will watch the meeting tonight, and this conversation may carry on to Facebook, but you have all been here, so you now have that information, and we can kind of make sure that this is settled. I do have to say that many of the comments that I read disappointed me in many members of our community, specifically with some commissioners, and so I would hope that if you have concerns that those would be made known, and that's something I completely respect, but there is a particular way in which those are brought forward, and I just want to make sure that people are sensitive to the fact that, as Lori mentioned, we do have many immigrant families here, and we want to make everyone feel welcomed. So I would say I would encourage anyone else with any questions to definitely come forward and ask those at this point. This would be a great opportunity once the rest of the council has been able to make comments. Thank you.
All right.
So I think what really was surprising is we were sort of informed of the first trip that, oh, by the way, I'm going on this trip. We didn't have any information about it. And as soon as you returned, and you announced that you were going on another trip. And so I think that really surprised members of the council when that was announced. And I think it surprised members of the public that it seemed that we were sort of being informed after the fact. And for me, I think I think the first trip, while you went as a member of the trade association, as the mayor pro tem of Brisbane, because we weren't informed of what the trip was meant to be or who you were meeting with or what the agenda was, and that there was the impression, at least on my part, that you were going as a private citizen or a member of the trade association and not representing the Brisbane Council, because we hadn't requested that you do that assignment. Like when you're on a member of a board or a JPA, you have an assignment to represent the city. And so that seemed like more of a personal growth or a business-oriented growth. And for me, when you announced the second trip, made me even more concerned that you were going as a representative of the city to maybe make an agreement or a more than a friendship, and have an agenda coming in, and that we weren't coming back and not having any input on what your trip was meant to be. So that's where I had concerns, and I think that if Brisbane should set up a policy for if you're going to do travel or things that you feel are to represent, or we feel that are to represent the council, that we have a policy in place to give those, whether you're saying, you're representing us or you're going on your own. And I think that would be important to have, and not just you, but any of us.
Do you feel your concerns were addressed from the presentation?
Somewhat. I don't think they were fully addressed, but I do think somewhat that they were.
Okay.
I still have reservations about it as being beneficial to Brisbane.
Okay. You have a lot of passion for our community, Lori. You're on the library committee. You're on the JPA, JPA for the libraries in San Mateo County, because you want to gather knowledge, to bring back to our city, so that you can then share that with the council, share that with the rest of the community. Being on the economic development subcommittee, you're looking at ways to provide diversity for our local economy. And I thought your explanation of why you went and the things that you learned, helped me as a council member, and I think they're very, very beneficial. When I decided to be on the Heart Board, I'm representing the city in regards to affordable housing in San Mateo County, but I didn't ask my council members if I could have approval to do that. I'm still representing the city, but I'm not making any deals, right? And you're not making any deals on behalf of the city. You're there to learn. I mean, this is what you have passion for, and we all have the things that we really care about. And so I don't think that we as a council should, say, well, these things that you care about are, I don't really think that they're that important, or, you really need to have approval from me before you can move forward. I think, we as a council were elected by the people, and we represent the people. But there are certain things that we should do on our own. And now, of course, if this trip was paid for by the city, absolutely. That's something that we budget. And that needs to be vetted by the full council to see if that's something that we think that we should fund. But something on your own, I think, is okay. But I do like what you said, Clark, about, just being out front. And sometimes, it's great to be able to do that, but sometimes you don't have that much time. And there is the Brown Act, and this is the first time that we've done this. And so we're learning. Other cities, down the peninsula, they've had trips over to Asia, for quite a few years. We're behind the ball, kind of the curve, and so we're catching up with that. So I think, I'm excited about your next trip, because I think you'll bring more knowledge back to the city, and you are someone who does your homework. You're very thorough, and this next trip that you're doing, I mean, you are making a sacrifice to your family. You got 2 small kids, and being someone who's a dad, and granted my kids are older now, but when they were young, I mean, I didn't want to spend hardly any time away from them. And here you're doing this on behalf of your community, and so in a way, I mean, that's a big sacrifice that you're making, but you're doing it because you think it's important for the job that you are in right now as a Brisbane City Council member. So I thank you for that. All right, so I know there's some folks that want to talk about this, and so the first person I have on here is Dana Dilworth. Or you said your piece. Okay, good. Barbara Ebel.
Sherry, would it be okay if I move this? Okay, then I'll just work around it. I don't want to inconvenience you. I'm just kind of... Yeah, no, it's fine. If you're going to need it again, just leave it. Okay, I thought we were done with it. Hi, Barbara Ebel. This meeting has been upsetting to me. I know I, for one, don't hide behind a computer screen. I told Lori exactly some of my concerns in the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting. I don't say anything on a computer screen that I don't say to people's faces. I don't think Brisbane is a hotbed of racism, and I think people saying it is or implying it is makes things a whole lot worse. Okay? I'm really upset. I know some people did use some words that could be construed as racist on Facebook, but I think that was unfortunate shorthand. You get rushed typing things. You get little sound bites on Facebook. I don't think that means they're really racist. Maybe I just have more faith in my neighbors than some of you do. I'm sorry. I sent in a couple of questions tonight in advance. I was hoping they would be addressed. Most of them have not been addressed yet.
Did you get anything?
I would like to know where the money came from, right back to the individual level. And I think that you owe us assurances that nobody from UPC or Tentucks was involved. I didn't jump to that conclusion. There was no conclusion involved. There was a question. And as far as I know, that question has not yet been answered. The representative here, who is very well spoken and who I find very personable and like, said where some of the money comes from. He said members put up some of the money. Those members could be anybody. You know, I'm sure it's all going to come out in the wash, but I still want an answer. Appearances are important. Due diligence is important. Going through the hoops, jumping through the steps, demonstrating that you're trustable is as important as being trustworthy. Okay? That's my opinion. And then some of the money was put up by China. Well, China, as you said, is a big country. That money that China put up could have come from any number of different vectors. So another question I have is, Lori, before you accepted this trip, did you ask? Did you ask where the money came from? Did you maybe as a lawyer ask for a signed affidavit that said there's no UPC money involved in this, so that there was not a conflict of interest? I would think, you know, maybe I'm a little like too pedantic because I'm not a lawyer, but if I was going into this situation, I would want to have it spelled out so that I could hold up and demonstrate that I did not have a conflict of interest here. I wouldn't want my neighbors to jump through hoops to trust me. I would want to prove up front that I am trustworthy. That's just the kind of person I am. Another question that I had written in advance is that I would like to know about I assume we're moving forward. I hope we move forward. We have a relationship with China, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not a racist. And I would like to see Brisbane have good businesses. Along those lines, I would like to know as much as possible as a citizen of this community about this vetting process. Do they have boots on the ground, or the companies just sign off a piece of paper saying we're good guys? You know, what are the standards? Do you know what the standards are? Or are you just taking them on face value that these are good companies? I want to know. And to some of the concerns that were expressed by other citizens, you know, where we spend our money is important. Fair trade is important. Divestment in South Africa was important. It's not just about the money, but it's about having good, clean money. So that is why I want to know details about these standards. And those, I was hoping, since I sent this question in advance, we'd get some answers to that tonight. Apparently not. Or maybe they can still happen tonight. I don't know. The City of Brisbane has a close relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is quartered here. I would sort of like to know, as a citizen, to whatever degree possible, I don't know how much I'm privy to and how much I'm not, what agreement the Chamber of Commerce signed. You know, do I get to know that as a citizen? You know, I'd sort of like to know. In this very meeting, Cliff, you asked for council support for the proclamation and council agreement for the proclamation and support of Measure A. Well, it seems to me like a trip to China is a bigger deal than whether or not we support Measure A. You know, so I think it was just, I went back and watched the meeting. Lori just said, yeah, I'm going on this trip. Well, maybe that was in her purview and maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a bureaucrat. I don't have a huge amount of experience with city administration. I don't have a degree in this. But it just seems to me like something that large you would discuss. That's fairly significant if you're representing the city of Brisbane to an area in China. It's just big. You know, so maybe it wasn't required, but maybe it would have been a good idea.
All right, Barbara, if you can wrap it up, please.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a little... All right, so in support of that, you know, I'm not ashamed of anything I've said. I've said it all here. If anybody has any problem with me, I would expect that they would come and talk to me, just like they are expecting I talk to them. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Hey, did you I don't remember receiving anything before the meeting, an email with any of those questions. Did that get sent to Sherry or? Okay.
And she did forward it to me, and I did review the email and tried to respond to the questions.
It must have been today.
No, it was a couple days ago, but I didn't get any response.
Okay. All right.
So but the rest of us, for the
I
record, didn't
had not
receive that.
So-
I don't think I got.
Yeah, you
sent
can
it
always
to me, and
contact me
It was about
directly.
Lori, and I gave it to Lori.
It said on the email questions for Lori, and
Right.
then you forwarded it to me.
The email, as I titled it, said questions for this meeting. It did not address you specifically, Lori. I was figuring some of these questions would need to be answered by possibly the China Trade Association, like, for example, their vetting process. I wouldn't expect Lori to know the answers to all of those things. So I'm sorry I did not put in the title to the whole of council and the China Trade Association and anybody else who might be able to answer those questions, but that was my intention. It was just questions for the meeting.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Mitch Bull.
Honorable Mayor, council members, my name is Mitch Bull. I am your Economic Development Director, as well as the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for Brisbane. Much has been made about how this trip came about. We have been in contact with the China Trade Association of San Mateo County prior to the trip. It was asked why I was not involved in the trip. I was not asked to participate in the trip. The Chinese Trade Association was looking at an elected official and a small business owner, of which I am not, in the city of Brisbane. We were aware of the trip. We met with our board of directors of the chamber, who approved having Ron Davis represent the chamber on the trip, and at his cost. The chamber made a donation to the Trade Association for the trip as a good faith partnership with the Chamber of Guangzhou. I am happy to read what agreement Mr. Davis signed on our behalf that we drafted, and I will do so now. It says, Proclamation, Memo of Understanding on Friendly Cooperation between the Brisbane Chamber of Commerce, California, and the Federation of Industry and Commerce of Zhangjiang, which is short for their version of a chamber. The Brisbane Chamber of Commerce, California, and the Federation of Industry and Commerce of Zhangjiang referred to herein as the parties, recognizing the importance of further promotion on friendly exchanges and cooperation between the Brisbane Chamber of Commerce, California, and the Federation of Industry and Commerce of Zhangjiang, hereby agree to work in cooperation in accordance with the terms of this Memo of Understanding as follows. 1. The parties agree to enhance mutual understanding and friendship through bilateral cultural, technical, and trade missions. 2. The parties agree to enhance cooperation and communication on the equality and mutual benefit of the parties. And 3, done in both languages of Chinese and English, and in 2 copies with equal authenticity, this Memo of Understanding shall come into effect on the date of signing and be kept by the parties. And we have here with our seal, Mr. Davis's signature and the signature from the Federation of Industry and Commerce in Zhangjiang. That's what we did. Everything we do at the Chamber is open to both our members and the public, as are our meetings. And my number's posted in the directory, and feel free to call me or email me at any time regarding any questions. As the Economic Development Director, we look forward to working with any country, company that wants to investigate Brisbane, which is what our role is. Our role is to listen. Our role is to help staff vet companies. And of course, anyone that wants to move here would go through planning and vetting and etc. I would expect that commissioners on all of our commissions, as well as the council members, would seriously take into account what companies are coming in. We do not want to let anyone in that we think has human rights violations, etc. However, we know that if we have a zoning parcel that is zoned and a broker brings in a company and it's under a use that's already approved,
There's no vetting.
there's no vetting. And that doesn't matter whether it's Chinese, German, Irish, or American.
Yes.
So we know that. And that doesn't take the responsibility off everyone. However, there is public discourse, there is time for public comment, and I believe everything that we have done has been transparently up and up. Any questions?
I just want to say that I think it's important that you did mention that the chamber decided on who was going to represent the chamber.
Correct.
We as a council did not have that opportunity. The public did to elect Laurie, but we didn't say that we picked Laurie to go.
Understood. Any other questions?
I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but I just think that I want to ask it so that it can be made clear for the public that's listening. Would you vet an international company or a company that's coming from another country any differently than a country that was an American country?
Yes, in the respect that we would want more of the financial information that is, I mean, public records is what we would deal with, and the legal entities that a company represents and what they have publicly stated, no matter if it's Japanese. I worked for Hitachi for many years, Japanese company, and it was not always warmly received at first. But again, companies are listed by their financial records. And of course, if there's bad press in any place with the internet today, it's pretty easy to find out what's going on with companies. If they have violations, environmental violations, human rights violations, etc. It's much more available today through the internet than ever before, even if it's not public or not.
All right. Thank you, Mitch.
I do have a question. When you talk about vetting companies, what role would the chamber have for vetting a company that wanted to start here?
For instance, if the chamber, well, we can't vet them to start here.
Right.
We could vet them to be a member of the chamber.
Oh, okay.
We don't accept everybody. Now, as economic development director, of course, sitting with city staff, we would look at things differently.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mitch. All right. Joel Diaz.
Good evening, council members. Joel Diaz. So let me just start by saying I deeply regret having to come up here and sort of attempt to hold people accountable in my mind. Okay, and I do appreciate the explanation, and I see it as there are several layers here of problematic things. The whole racial suggestion and these things that are sort of hearsay and not really necessarily documented, separate issue. For me and some of my constituents, it's the procedure. It's the way that the thing happened, the way that the thing unfolded. And what concerns me is that we're possibly setting up a precedent. We're possibly setting ourselves up for liability and just doing things, not efficiently in the best way. And, typically we want to have some checks and balances and some safety mechanisms. And we have this wonderful staff and resources here. We have 5 brilliant people on the council that can all weigh in and really discern some of these issues. Because sometimes we don't, as people, we don't see everything from every angle, and maybe we'll miss something. And, I would describe Laurie as energetic, enthusiastic, wanting to be everywhere, doing everything in a positive way. And I think that's a really positive attribute. I think everybody up here has very positive attributes, very, very wonderful personal qualities. The problem with getting enthusiastic and really excited about stuff is that sometimes, we kind of, I think somebody said, jump to conclusions. We sort of jump to make a judgment about things. judge a book by its cover, and we know that when we do that, sometimes we make mistakes. And, the way I see it is Lori probably should have vetted this with the staff, with the city attorney, with all of you guys, so that you guys could all weigh in to make sure that mistakes won't be made. And when I first heard it, I thought, well, geez, that's, the council authorized that. Okay, that's fine. But then I saw a meeting, I think it was March 21st, and Clark seemed very surprised. He said, geez, who's paying for this? And Lori was talking about going on another trip. She'd already gone on one trip. He said, she's going on another trip. And Clark says, whoa, who's paying for this? So what's said to me, he didn't even know that somebody else was paying for the trip, which I think is problematic, which means there was some sort of communication broke down. And then he asked if Lori had run it by the city attorney, which Lori had said, no, I did not run it by the city attorney. I had talked with the city manager. And then she said, well, I conferred with the city. And then you spoke to Clark and said, actually, I also called the FPPC, asked them the questions, got the okay. So as it turns out, in hindsight,
And Joe, if you could just wrap it up, too, because it's been 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I have several items, and I think it's 5 minutes per item is the way it works.
No.
Isn't that how
No.
your bylaws work,
No.
speaking?
No, because then you'd be up here forever. So I want you to wrap it up right now, please. Okay? You need to wrap it up, sir.
All right, so
Thank you.
So just to clarify some things, the money for the trip for Lori to go there and back was paid for by the China Trade Association. It was not paid by Lori. They paid for her ticket. They just mentioned tonight that they don't have their nonprofit status, which means that Lori took a gift from. They just said tonight that they don't have.
They're shaking their head back there.
I know, because I just asked them, and they were deeply. I'll let them explain it to you, but technically they do not. And had you vetted this, you would have understood that. Also, there's a potential for a Brown Act violation here because of the posts on Facebook. And we sent a message to the attorney, and the attorney said there's no evidence of that. But actually, there is evidence of that. We have some council members that have already admitted that they saw it. This discussion was about an upcoming business item on an agenda. And I don't know if you're aware, but on Facebook, that typically the admin can see who has actually seen a post.
Are you wrapping it up, Joel? I'm asking you.
I am wrapping it up, but I have a lot of material.
You know what? Then I want you
cover,
to do. You have it in writing, and just submit it, and that'll be fine.
I have, Cliff.
Okay.
And I get what you're trying to do here, but this is
I'm getting.
And we deserve a chance to speak.
No,
right? It's a very
either
complicated
if
matter.
I'm telling you to wrap it up.
And I'm
or you
trying.
can
There's a
sit
lot
down.
of material.
And if you
for me
can't
to
do
cover.
that, then submit it in writing, and it'll be part of the public record.
But interrupting me is just making this go longer.
You
So
know
I
what?
appreciate
Then
it. But if
you need to sit down.
I can't help but notice that your disparaging remarks and trying to belittle me is an attempt to control me, and I can assure you that you're just wasting your time. Just let me finish.
Every other citizen has to abide by the same rule.
You're above the rules,
chair.
Joel. That's what you're saying.
Every other citizen.
I just have a well thought out situation
you're done.
here. So again, I do think that we need to hear from the FPPC.
We can take a 5-minute break since you are not
Brown
abiding
Act.
by the rules.
I'm done now. Sorry that this went too long.
Okay, thank you. Sit down, please.
I think we should still take that 5 minute.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, no, that sounds good.